Altogether, there have been two kingdoms of Hungary. The first one lasted for almost 1,000 years and formed an important part of the Habsburg domain. And the second one is famous for not actually having a king. It did have a regent whose job it was to find a king, and there were many people who were happy to take the job. But notably, he never did this, and the Kingdom of Hungary remained without a monarch until its dissolution in 1946. So the Kingdom of Hungary was reborn after the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in World War I. Hungary was briefly declared a republic, broke down into civil war, was declared a Soviet republic, invaded Romania, lost and broke down into civil war again, before returning to a democratic republic where it would stably remain, and never mind, there was another civil war. This eventually saw Miklos Horthy, a very well-respected admiral named regent of the landlocked country, at the head of a conservative coalition. And Horthy then reluctantly signed Hungary's surrender document. But this wasn't until after some of the members of his government had asked if Britain was willing to install one of its princes to the Hungarian throne. And this was offered on the condition that Hungary lose less land, but unsurprisingly Britain said no. So, as regent, it was Horthy's job to make himself redundant by replacing himself with a king. This seemed like a pretty easy job at the time, since the last king of Hungary, Charles Habsburg, was still active and living in Switzerland. But not for long though, since he soon snuck into Hungary to relieve Horthy of his job. Horthy refused though, because France and the little entente surrounding Hungary had made it clear that a Habsburg on the throne meant war. Charles bided his time, and later in 1920 he returned to Budapest with an army of volunteers. He had promised this army that his return would be greeted with cheers, but when it was greeted with bullets, his army mostly gave up and he was forced to leave the country forevermore. With the last Habsburg claimant gone, that meant that Horthy needed to pick another king. So Horthy's initial plan was to wait for Hungary and the international landscape to stabilise before choosing a new monarch. But as you know, no king was ever chosen, so why not? Well, there were several candidates that held some support for taking the throne. The first and most prominent was King Ferdinand of Romania. The reason that Ferdinand had some support was that Romania now controlled Transylvania, which was majority Hungarian. And there was a belief that having Ferdinand be king of both would protect the rights of Hungarians in Romania. And it also likely meant that Hungary could shake off some of the worst terms of its surrender. The answer was an obvious no. Since a year previous, Ferdinand's armies had invaded and occupied much of Hungary. And all of the other candidates were minor princes from basically every European royal family, and very few of them had much support. Which left one last potential candidate, Horthy himself. There were some who wanted a Hungarian royal family, and since Horthy was so well respected, he would do. Horthy, of course, would never accept the title for two reasons. The first was that his allies supported him as a regent who would one day restore a monarchy, but not as a monarch himself. And second, by becoming king, he would become a constitutional monarch, which would mean he would wield less power than he did as a regent, which he didn't want because everybody loves power. And with that, he simply remained as regent, with dictatorial powers which he could prop up with a one day soon I totally promise any minute now guarantee that he would restore the crown of St. Stephen. And with that and Hungary's eventual loss in World War II, its days of being ruled by a monarch were over.